Hey everyone! Today, we're diving into something a lot of us grapple with: anxiety and depression. You know, that constant worrying or that heavy feeling that just saps your motivation. It can feel overwhelming, right? But what if there was a structured way to tackle it, step by step?
Okay, let me guess, Autumn. Here comes cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, as our potential superhero. Ready to swoop in and save the day?
No superhero, Rachel, just solid science-backed methods. And what's really cool is that we're talking about a practical 7-week program that anyone can follow. It starts with figuring out what you actually want to achieve. Then it walks you through identifying and changing those thought patterns that just keep feeding the anxiety or depression.
7 weeks, huh? Sounds like a mental spring cleaning, maybe?
More like a boot camp, as you said. A workout for your mind. But instead of leaving you exhausted, it builds you up. We're talking about reshaping how you think, making positive behavior changes, and even gently facing your fears through exposure therapy. And it all wraps up with mindfulness to help you stay strong.
All right, I'm intrigued. So today we're basically dissecting this whole process. First, we'll get real about what anxiety and depression actually are. Then we'll look at the CBT techniques you can use to wrestle those negative thoughts. And finally, we'll walk everyone through that 7-week program, bit by bit.
Exactly. It's about arming our listeners with tools they can actually use to make a real difference in their lives. So let's jump in. So let's dive into understanding anxiety and depression. You know, people throw these terms around so casually, but they're really complex. It's way more than just feeling worried or sad. We're talking about emotional, physical, and even cognitive symptoms that can seriously impact someone's life.
Okay, Autumn, but why do we need to get into all the nitty-gritty details here? I mean, isn't it enough to just recognize that you're feeling off and try to fix it then?
Well, sure, that makes sense on the surface. But to really tackle these issues, you need to understand what's going on underneath. Take anxiety, for instance. It's not just being nervous. It's often a really intense fear response that's disproportionate to the actual threat. And there are different kinds too. Social anxiety, panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, phobias.
Right, so it's not one size fits all. Like social anxiety could mean you're terrified of public speaking. And a phobia, well, we know Mel is scared of dogs.
Exactly. Mel's experience is a perfect illustration of how anxiety can take over. It started with one scary encounter with a dog. Now, every time she sees one, her body reacts as though she's reliving that trauma all over again. Heart racing, cold sweats, the whole deal. To avoid those feelings, she avoids dogs completely. But, you know, that only reinforces her fear.
So, it's a vicious cycle. She avoids what she's scared of, and the avoidance actually makes her fear even stronger.
Exactly. That's anxiety in a nutshell. So, to break that cycle, like what CBT aims to do, it's not just about forcing yourself to face the fear head-on. It's about gradually changing how your brain responds to it.
Right. But not everyone has phobias. Right? What about that more common, everyday kind of anxiety?
That would be generalized anxiety disorder. Imagine waking up every day with a knot in your stomach, constantly worrying about things: work, money, relationships, even small stuff like what to cook for dinner. It's absolutely exhausting and totally consuming. And then there's panic disorder, where people experience these sudden intense episodes of panic, as if their alarm system is totally malfunctioning.
Sounds overwhelming. And statistically, it's not, exactly rare, huh? Isn't it like 1 in 5 people deal with these disorders?
You're close. I think it's about 18% of people who struggle with specific phobias, and social anxiety impacts roughly 13%. Interestingly, women are over 70% more likely to develop anxiety disorders than men, highlighting some pretty significant societal and biological factors at play.
So that's anxiety. The brain basically reacting like every situation is DEFCON 1. Let's move on to depression. How would you say it differs in terms of the mechanics?
Well, unlike anxiety, depression often involves feelings of hopelessness, a lack of energy, and a diminished ability to enjoy life. But like anxiety, it's complex, and it comes in different forms. Major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, and PMDD.
And it's not just emotional, right? I mean, doesn't depression manifest itself physically too?
Definitely. It's more than just feeling sad. It can affect sleep, appetite, and even cognitive functions, like memory and focus. People might feel physically drained, like they're moving through mud or experience weight fluctuations.
Which, ties perfectly into Bill's story, doesn't it? Here's a guy who loved running, active, social, living his best life, until one injury sidelined him, both physically and mentally.
Exactly. Bill started with a broken leg, but the real challenge was how that injury spiraled into depression. He lost the activity that brought him joy and connection, and he started second-guessing everything about himself. It became a feedback loop. The physical pain fed into the emotional despair, which, of course, made his recovery even harder.
It's, heartbreaking. And you're right, Autumn. The stats really back up how widespread this is across the world. A leading cause of disability. I mean, that's staggering.
Over 350 million people worldwide suffer from depression. And in the U.S., 1 in 4 people will experience a major depressive episode at some point in their lives. For women, the risk is 70% higher than men.
It's interesting. So a lot of this seems connected, like anxiety and depression are two sides of the same coin, in a way, right?
Absolutely. They share a common thread: distorted thought patterns. Thoughts like, I'll never succeed, or I'm a failure, fuel both conditions. These become automatic beliefs, leading to emotions like fear or hopelessness, which then influence behavior, like withdrawing from people or avoiding challenges.
Okay, so if someone's dreading a party because they think, if I go, I'll embarrass myself, the anxiety makes them avoid the event. But then, doesn't avoiding it just validate the original belief?
Precisely. That's the cognitive behavioral framework at work. Avoidance strengthens those negative thought spirals. However, CBT helps people recognize these distortions and replace them with balanced, more realistic perspectives.
So instead of, I'll embarrass myself, you'd shift to, I might feel nervous, but that doesn't mean I'll mess up. And even if it's awkward, it's okay. I'm human. Right?
Exactly. That small reframing opens the door to emotional growth and resilience, which is why understanding anxiety and depression is so crucial. Once you recognize these patterns, you're much better equipped to break them.
Makes sense. And that's where CBT comes in. But before we jump into the techniques, I think it's clear that these conditions are more than just in your head. They're really deeply intertwined with how we think, feel, and act every single day.
Okay, now that we've defined these disorders, let's delve into how we actually treat them. Let's discuss cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. It's all about understanding that our thoughts, feelings, and actions are all connected.
All right, so let's unpack what's inside this toolkit. I'm guessing you're going to tell me it's structured, skill-based, and practical, right?
Exactly. Those are the cornerstones of CBT. It's a really targeted and practical approach, which is why it works so well. First off, it's very structured, typically lasting, say, 10 to 15 sessions. It has a clear beginning, middle, and end.
A deadline, huh? That makes sense, explains why you need to set goals quickly.
Right. It's goal-driven. So, for someone struggling with public speaking anxiety, you break that down. Smaller steps, like speaking in small meetings first. That keeps things on track, and those small wins build real momentum over time.
Okay, structured makes sense. But skills-based? Are we talking mental exercises here?
Not quite. CBT gives you tools you can use long after therapy ends. Recognizing negative thought patterns, questioning those patterns, and swapping them for healthier ones. It's about empowering you, giving you techniques to handle future challenges.
A mental first aid kit, then. Knowing when to short-circuit those anxious spirals before they get out of control.
Precisely. And that leads us to the third aspect, which is active participation. CBT isn't a passive process. Homework is essential, whether that's journaling, relaxation exercises, or trying new things in real situations.
Homework? Yeah. But people either commit fully or just skip it.
True, accountability helps. But for those who commit, the results are profound. Take cognitive restructuring, a key CBT technique. It's about spotting those automatic negative thoughts that can turn into anxiety or depression.
Cognitive restructuring. Is that just arguing with yourself?
It goes deeper. It's about spotting patterns, cognitive distortions as CBT calls them, and finding evidence to either back them up or disprove them. Catastrophic thinking, for instance, makes you jump to the worst-case scenario, while all-or-nothing thinking makes you see things in extremes. Take Alex, who's juggling work-life balance. She kept telling herself, "I'm a disappointment in every way."
Ouch. And every little mistake becomes proof, doesn't it?
Exactly. So with her therapist, Alex challenged this belief through a thought record, breaking it down. What evidence shows this is true, and what shows it's false? She missed a deadline, yes, but her boss often praised her project management. Her daughter adored her. Gradually, Alex shifted from "I'm a failure" to "I've made mistakes, but I'm doing my best."
That kind of reframe keeps the self-doubt from snowballing. Now, what about behavioral activation? Sounds like just do stuff.
Well, in a way, it is. Behavioral activation gets people moving. It's about acting first to trigger improvement, not waiting for motivation, and it's often used with people who feel stuck, which is common in depression and anxiety.
Give me an example. How did someone get unstuck using this activation method?
Kat is a great example. She had social anxiety and depression, withdrew from friends, and avoided gatherings. One weekend, she skipped a simple hangout with coworkers, reinforcing, "Nobody wants me around." Behavioral activation helped her reconnect with her values, like having good friendships. It started small, coffee with a coworker before tackling bigger events.
By acting, even when she didn't feel like it, she disproved her own fears of rejection.
Exactly. Behavioral activation breaks the cycle of disengagement. Each action boosts confidence, making it easier over time. So, by adjusting your thoughts and changing your behavior, it's even more powerful.
So CBT is really a 1-2 punch. You fight the thoughts, and then get into action to build new momentum.
So, equipped with all those techniques, the next step is to actually use them systematically, right? That's where the 7-week CBT program comes in. It gives people a clear, actionable way to not only learn these strategies, but actually integrate them into their daily lives for long-term benefits.
Okay, 7 weeks. Let me guess, because it's CBT, it's going to be a step-by-step breakdown, right? This isn't just showing up and hoping for the best.
Exactly. Each week focuses on a core theme or skill, building on the last. It's like a training plan for the mind, so participants develop resilience progressively. For instance, The first week lays the groundwork with goal setting, identifying challenges, and really clarifying what improvement looks like for you.
Goal setting seems straightforward enough. You write down like, I want to stop being anxious, and just try not to spiral from there.
Not quite. The goals need to be specific, actionable, and deeply personal. It's about identifying the specific areas where the struggles are really affecting you. Take Phil, for example, a guy dealing with seasonal affective disorder. As the days got shorter, his energy and mood just tanked. He stopped spending time with his family, dropped his outdoor hobbies, and felt totally stuck. His goal wasn't just be happier. He and his therapist worked to reclaim parts of his life he actually missed, like connecting with his wife and going for short walks outside.
So forget the big abstract goals. Focus on reclaiming tangible, everyday parts of life that bring you value, that you miss.
Exactly. But it's more than just saying, I want to fix this. Week 1 also asks people to think about their strengths and readiness to change. It's that self-assessment, acknowledging challenges, but also focusing on what you've overcome before, that helps you build confidence for what's ahead. For Phil, just talking openly with his wife about his struggles helped him see that accepting support wasn't a weakness, but a first step toward change.
So week 1 is all about honesty, really, isn't it? Evaluating your life, your strengths, and whether you're really ready to tackle it all head-on.
Exactly. Then week 2. It takes things a step further with behavioral activation, re-engaging with meaningful activities. Depression often pulls people into this downward spiral of inaction, isolating them from the very things that could actually help lift their mood. This step kind of flips that script by gently encouraging people to take small, value-driven actions, even if they really don't feel ready.
Let me guess, Kat's story fits perfectly here. She avoided her friends because of social anxiety and ended up feeling lonelier, which made the anxiety worse. A cycle?
Absolutely. Kat worked with her therapist to identify one action aligned with her values, reaching out to a friend for coffee. It was a small step, but it gave her a chance to challenge the belief that her friends didn't value her company. And the result? That connection shattered her assumptions and reminded her of the joy in being around others.
Okay, but what if you've been stuck for so long that you're not even sure what activities resonate with you anymore? How do you even figure out what's meaningful to you?
That's a great question, and it's part of what week 2 tackles with a structured approach. First, you identify your core values, things like relationships, creativity, or physical health. Then, you brainstorm activities tied to those values. For example, someone valuing creativity might just start with a short sketching session, while someone focusing on relationships might initiate a brief phone call with loved ones.
So you start small, and it snowballs from there?
Exactly. Momentum breeds motivation, right? And to make the process even smoother, activities are rated by difficulty, so participants can ease in, focusing on manageable goals before tackling bigger challenges.
Let me guess. The next piece is about tackling the mental blocks keeping you stuck. Finding the why behind the anxious or depressive thoughts.
You're spot on. That's week 3, identifying negative thought patterns. This step introduces thought monitoring tools, writing down your automatic responses to situations, and examining how they connect to your emotions and behavior. It's really about shining a light on what's happening beneath the surface.
Like keeping a diary for your brain? So someone anxious about a party might jot down, I'm afraid everyone will think I'm awkward, and then connect that to their avoidance?
Exactly. Once this is written down, people can begin to spot patterns. Maybe it's catastrophizing, jumping to the worst possible scenario, or personalization, where they take everything personally. Tools like mindfulness also come into play here, helping participants avoid getting too caught up in those thoughts.
Mindfulness. Let me guess, it's not just sitting cross-legged with your eyes closed.
Not at all. It's about grounding yourself in the present. Exercises like the five senses technique, tuning into what you're seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, and tasting in the moment, can interrupt the loop of spiraling thoughts. It's simple, but really impactful.
So once you've spotted the negative patterns in week 3, what's next? Just logic your way out of them in week 4?
Close! Week 4 builds on this with cognitive restructuring, a systematic way to challenge those negative thought distortions. Remember Alex, the working mom who constantly felt like a failure? She used thought records to break down that belief, examining it with evidence. Turns out she wasn't a failure at all. She had concrete examples of success both at work and at home.
So instead of just letting her brain run wild, she fact-checked herself and reframed her narrative in the process.
Exactly. And cognitive restructuring also pairs beautifully with self-compassion. Participants begin treating themselves with the kindness and forgiveness they'd show a friend. This emotional shift creates lasting change.
So with all these tools in place, what's week 5 about? Managing the chaos of life?
In a way, yes. This week focuses on time and task management. Anxiety and depression often make everything feel completely overwhelming, right? Simple tools like the SMART criteria, setting goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, help people break tasks into bite-sized chunks.
Like breaking down clean the house into tidy the living room for 10 minutes. Makes it seem doable rather than daunting.
Exactly. Procrastination is also tackled head-on, using methods like structured scheduling or the Pomodoro technique to encourage focus and pacing. It's all about regaining a sense of control over your daily life.
And week 6 must be the big one. Facing your fears, right?
Absolutely. This is exposure therapy, where gradual steps are taken to confront what's holding you back. Say someone has a fear of public speaking. Their therapist might help them start by practicing in front of a mirror, then gradually progress to speaking in front of small groups.
It's like building a ladder, climbing one step at a time instead of leaping straight into the deep end.
Exactly. And by removing avoidance behaviors, like using safety nets to cope, they begin to reshape their emotional responses, cultivating confidence over time.
So wrapping this all together, weeks 1 through 6 are about building skills, while week 7 focuses on integrating them for the long haul.
Exactly. Week 7 emphasizes sustained practice. By revisiting all the skills learned, goal setting, behavioral activation, cognitive restructuring, exposure therapy, participants develop a long-term wellness plan. This includes identifying potential triggers, creating preventive strategies, and even using reflective journals to monitor ongoing progress.
So it's not just about tackling the current problem. It's a roadmap for lifelong resilience.
Wow, what a journey we've had exploring anxiety, depression, and the transformative power of CBT. We really covered a lot, from understanding the cycles of these mental health challenges to the science-backed techniques designed to break them. Whether it's reshaping our thoughts, re-engaging with life, or taking small manageable steps toward confronting our fears, the tools are there, and they're practical, approachable, and most importantly, empowering.
Yeah, and let's not forget about that 7-week program we talked about. It's almost like a DIY manual for rewiring your brain, you know, without all the complicated tech jargon. You start with setting achievable goals, and you end with a concrete plan for building lifelong resilience. It's not about striving for perfection. It's about focusing on steady progress.
Exactly. And here's perhaps the most important thing to remember. Whether you're feeling stuck in negative thought patterns, completely overwhelmed by life's demands, or just simply curious about strengthening your mental and mental well-being, CBT isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. That being said, it does offer adaptable tools that can be tailored to your unique challenges, empowering you to create significant and lasting change.
And listen, even for someone like me, who tends to be a bit skeptical, it's hard to argue with the underlying logic here. It's not about some magical cure. It's about utilizing practical strategies that, with consistency and dedication, can actually make a real difference in one's life.
Absolutely. So take that all-important first step. Start by picking up the workbook, setting a small, attainable goal, or simply challenging a negative thought today. Just remember, lasting change happens one step at a time.
One mindful, structured, scientifically backed step at a time, isn't it?
Exactly. Thanks so much for joining us today. And until next time, remember to take care of your mind. It's truly the best investment you'll ever make.
Catch you next time, everyone.